Okay, so the first slide is myself. That way I can tell you why am I relevant here in front of you? Why should I be speaking with you guys today? I am the head of revenue. I'm also a Y Combinator founder myself. Last year, I built our B2B sales team from 0 to 14 people, and now we're scaling that team to 30 plus people. Our company is about 180 people just for scale, and we're post Series B. I'm building the partnerships team now from 0 to 1 as well, and also a few $1 million. So I'm very familiar with building remote teams. I love building remote teams, and I'm very, very passionate about building a culture that people want to be part of, and that they want to wake up every Monday morning and feel like it's not like going to like a typical job. It's really doing something they love, and they don't have to have that Sunday night jitters or whatever that is called, where people don't want to go the next morning to work. So yeah, I started working remotely in 2008. Been doing this for quite a while. I'm just going to mute myself in a second. Okay, there's an ambulance going by. So today's agenda, we'll have a poll just to understand kind of like how many of you are in different countries around the world. Then we'll go into the panel discussion, and then we'll leave time for Q&A. The next one. Okay, so the first poll will be launched right now. Please do choose if your organization is borderless and in how many countries currently. Okay, did everyone vote? 74%, yes? Okay, cool. Okay, great. So the majority, about 61%, are in 3 or more countries. And then about 25% are the no's, which is totally fine. And we're excited to kind of share these things with you and hopefully get you to more countries. Okay, what is the next one? Okay, so who is SafetyWing and why are we organizing this? SafetyWing is a global social safety net that we're building, and that's basically benefits for your workforce, whether it's for freelancers, for remote companies, as well as those that are distributed. We cover them with health insurance. In the future, we're going to have remote pensions and retirement, disability, life insurance, income protection, maternity and paternity leave, to really kind of like round out that global benefits package. So yeah, if you need benefits, that's us. And we actually partner with all of the people on this webinar, which is fantastic. We can go to the next one, which brings me to today's panelists. We have some great companies here. We have Jeeves, we have Deal, and we have First Base. And I'm going to ask the panelists to just turn their cameras. And I'll start with Katie. If you can introduce yourself, since you're first on this slide, and then Adam, and then Colby, that'll be fantastic. And yeah, please give a quick background why you are relevant today. Obviously, you're building remote teams and your experience. That'll be great for the audience. And make it also like how many employees and what level of funding, perhaps.
Sure. So I'm Katie Ray. Thanks for having me. I'm the Chief People Officer at Jeeves. Been here about a year. So Jeeves is a global borderless bank, which shockingly does not exist, but that's what we're here to do. We've got 180 employees and we're Series C, and we've got a 2.1 billion valuation. So it's been a quick ride. And prior to Jeeves, I spent a lot of my time at Deloitte, the consulting company, and I was at Facebook pre-IPO through the IPO. That's where I got my best HR experience. And then I spent some time at Netflix before. My timing is brilliant. I feel bad. I'm not gonna say anything bad about Netflix. I love it there, but left Netflix and now I'm here. And I'll pass it to Adam.
Great, thanks, Katie. Yeah, hi everyone. I'm Adam. I'm the VP of Sales at FirstBase. FirstBase is a hardware as a service platform. So we help companies supply, finance, manage all of the equipment that they need for their remote teams. So whether that's helping with onboarding, getting them the stuff they need, whether that's helping them with offboarding and collecting stuff when employees leave, and everything in between. We provide a SaaS platform which helps to facilitate that for our customers. In terms of FirstBase, we raised our Series B earlier this year, which we raised $50 million, and we have at this point in time just over 100 employees around the world. And I'll hand over to Colby.
Thanks, Adam. Hi, everyone. I'm so excited to be on this panel today. My name is Colby Splain. I work on internal communications and culture at Deal. Deal is a leading global compliance and payroll solutions company, which helps businesses hire anyone, anywhere in the world. And we offer unmatched payroll, HR, compliance, perks, benefits, and capabilities needed to hire and manage a global team. And our ultimate goal really is to just help millions of people work for the best companies around the world, no matter where they live, regardless of compliance, and we help build that in there for people to hire successfully. We have over about 1,200 employees all over the world, spread across more than 70 countries, and we serve over 8,000 customers in over 150 countries. So we've raised over 700 million with investors like A16Z and Spark Capital. So I think we just went through round D fundraising.
Yes, that was round D, right? The last one?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Amazing. So incredible. So we have some different perspectives at the table, which is really nice. Cool. I guess, Charles, will you go to the next slide? I think there's another poll for you guys. This is the last one, and then we'll start the conversation to see really where we should get started. Depends on what you vote. So please vote. Which are you most excited to hear about today? Which topic would you like for us to start with? Okay, keep voting. Vote, everyone. So you hear what you want. Okay, cool. 77% voted again, which is amazing. And the one that came at the top is helping remote workers be productive and preventing fatigue, which is really nice that you care. The next one was organizing remote employee team building activities. Okay, that's great. And then the third one, giving remote workers a better onboarding process. Okay, so let's maybe start the conversation with helping remote workers be productive while preventing fatigue. This is a fun one. Yeah, as a remote first company, I love this question, but I'll let maybe one of you guys start if you want. Otherwise, I'll
jump right in. I think flexibility is so key when it comes to a remote work and working across time zones and thinking about how to set people up for success. Leaning into flexibility, working when you're most productive, and allowing yourself the grace and space to take micro breaks throughout the day and really take ownership of your calendar. Make sure that you have that time to take a walk throughout the day, to have a break between customer calls, to reset, do any prep work you have to do, but also to give your mind and body a break from the computer screen. I have a golden retriever, so I love to go outside for a walk, usually once or twice a day, to give myself a nice micro break. And we try and encourage the leadership team to lead by example and set their calendars, set their Slack statuses, and make sure that people know it's okay to take that time throughout the day to work when you're most flexible. If you're an early bird, work early in the morning. If you would prefer to be a night owl and work at night, that's up to you, because you own your calendar when you work in a remote setting, and ensure you're just working at your most productive level throughout the day.
Very good.
I can add it. I mean, I wrote down flexibility, Colby. I think you totally smashed it there. I agree. I'm a mom. I have 2 young children, and I decided that I wasn't going to miss out. And working remotely has been so life-changing for me because I had never worked at home before in any of the companies prior to this. And I do truly feel like I can work at this company forever because I have exciting work to do and I can do it on my time, and I'm not going to miss my son's basketball game or my daughter's gymnastics. The challenge, the inherent challenge that everybody's probably thinking about are the meetings, right? So I have a lot of meetings with India, for example. But one way around it is we'll do, I mean, this is more for women, but we'll do like no makeup Friday, where you might have your early meetings and you don't have to worry about makeup, or you can turn, I'm a fan of having the camera on at all times, so I do, but if it's going to be more flexible for you at 9 o'clock or 10 o'clock at night, if you have to take a call, just don't turn your camera on so you can actually be in pajamas. So just kind of working around that flexibility. I just love working from home, and it's not for everyone, but that's where people can decide which company is going to be best for them. I'm just kind of repeating what you said, Colby.
Yeah.
Anything to add, Adam?
Yeah, I mean, I think, again, I would echo what's been said. I think the key thing is, like, remote work in many ways offers great benefits, but it also presents challenges because it blurs the lines between work and outside of work activities. So, for example, since the pandemic, about 52% of people say that they are suffering from burnout, and that's about a 9% increase from pre-pandemic, obviously when there was a lot less remote work. And so it's a very difficult balance to strike. And I think one of the key things that I think is important is, and Colby, you touched upon it a little bit, is having leaders in a team lead by example. It's very easy to sit there and say, you know, we believe in remote work, we believe in work in your own time and what have you. But actually, if the leadership of a company doesn't actually live that and do that, then that behavior is then replicated across the team. And so, you know, I think if I use First Base as an example, we have, you know, I lived for myself, for example, I lived in Barbados for 12 months because Barbados offers a work from anywhere visa, a remote work visa. So I went and did that, and I experienced that, and I embodied that work from anywhere policy. Similarly, in the last month, our VP of engineering has been on holiday with his family in France. Our VP of product has been on holiday with his family in Britain. And of course, they've taken some time off with their family, but they've also had extended periods of time in that separate country in which they've been working. And that is something which remote work obviously allows. It allows you to essentially have longer trips or go to different places and continue working in a way that you couldn't before. But as I said, I think it's important that the leadership of a company actually lives that and embodies that, and to see that, and then also celebrates it. And so, for example, having channels, whether it's on Slack, whether it's on whatever other channel that you as a company might be using, an outlet to celebrate when you as an individual are taking advantage of these benefits. So, you know, Katie, your example, when you're at your son's basketball game, where take a picture and post that in your company Slack. When I was in Barbados sitting on the beach one day, take a picture and post that, so that it's not just, yeah, okay, we say we do it, it's actually living it and celebrating it and taking advantage of that as a group.
Yeah, for me is freedom over time and location. Being a founder and also a very kind of like independent person, I love controlling where I want to be versus someone else telling me where I have to be. And during the pandemic, I was really lucky because I was able to live in places which gave me a great kind of like life-centric type of way of living, and I was able to go in places like Puerto Rico and Mexico and Costa Rica with my family versus having to be locked down. Also, it's important to mention that a lot of people or, you know, a lot of companies were forced to work from home, which is not really ideal all the time. And especially when you have your kids at home and they can't go to daycare or to school. That's where it becomes really exhausting, and that's where we see burnout. Also, we should mention that culture is so important because you want to have a culture that is not at like 12-hour day work, you know, 60 hours a week. I don't know, like that's a lot of time to put on your employees and contractors. Also, what we do at SafetyWing is that we don't have like a unlimited vacation. We have a minimum vacation, so you have to take at least 20 days a year. and the founders take at least a week, a quarter themselves, and they're completely off Slack and all the different channels. So like you guys said, the leading by example is huge. But yeah, I'm all about like living a rich life without necessarily being rich. And I can do that by having flexibility and freedom over my time and location. And yeah, really excited to share that with you guys.
I think that I think that point about holidays is really interesting. I think it kind of makes me think about, there's a bit of research that a professor called Dr. Sehar Youssef at Berkeley did, and he basically looked at the importance of holidays, but he also then broke it down into, he talked about macro breaks, meso breaks, and micro breaks. And macro meaning taking at least a day off every month, meso being 1 to 2 hours a week where you're just switching off and, you know, going and doing a sport or whatever it might be, and micro breaks or the shorter breaks. And I think building that into your work schedule, as well as you say there, Lona, about, you know, doing holidays and enforcing minimum holidays, I think is super important. I'd be interested, I'd love to understand from you actually, when that policy was introduced, did you see a change in behavior? Did you see employees start to take more time off, and what was the impact of that?
See, the cool thing is that because we've been remote first from day one, a lot of these things have been very simple, or not very simple, but they were all decided like as the company was started. Many things that make a huge difference in having to manage, you know, remote teams. Like one thing we believe is that hiring people with the same mission and vision that we have makes it super easy to manage. Like you don't have to manage them at all, because if everybody's going in the same direction, if you're going towards the same goal, you don't have to, you know, tell the person every single day to do X, Y, Z. They already know, they're already creative, they're thinking about new ideas. How do I generate more revenue? How do I do more? You know, that's kind of like part of the deal when you hire people with the same mission. But I want to move on to the next one because I'm sure people are very curious, which is actually quite a nice segue. So organizing remote employee trainings and team building activities. I have some good ones about this, but maybe who wants to get started first? Anyone? No. Okay,
well,
I'll start.
I can add something, but I don't know if it's that like innovative. But it is, nothing's going to replace the in-person relationships that you're going to build. So we don't have a cadence set yet because we're still, you know, COVID's happening and things like that. But just having your own team, like even my own people team, I'm having in-person offsites where half the time is meant for actually goal setting and getting real work done, and the other half is just relationship building, just fun things, and we decide what we want to do. And I let the team pick, like we might have 5 options and we can all vote on what we want to do. So again, it's kind of back to basics. It's not very innovative, but it does help when you know the people very well. And then when you go back home and everyone's on video, that trust has been built and it's there. So that's what we're doing, but nothing earth-shattering.
Similar to Katie, at Deal, we lean into more of the informal meetup setting where we have a lot of different hubs where different people are located in London, in New York City, in San Francisco, in Israel, all over the world, really. And if there are more than, you know, 1 or 2 dealers in that area, we encourage them to meet up. We, you know, allow them to expense X amount of money to be able to meet up with one another, train, plane, you know, and we ask people to spend that time in person, whether they be on your team or not. And then we have some more informal settings where we have acquired a company to invest in how people can connect virtually and what technology we're investing to make sure that through a virtual setting, how are we setting expectations and opportunities for people to connect one-on-one with those folks from all over the world and have that informal discussion, not necessarily always about business, not about how you have to collaborate on a project, but what passion points do you have? What interest groups are you a part of through our Slack channels? And how can you find other ways to connect with people and bring your full selves to work each day, not through just business, but also through your passion points and your personal life too. So I do love the in-person aspect too, Katie. I think it's really important. And if it's an opportunity for the business to be able to put opportunities in play where people can connect through informal meetups or business case offsites. I think that's great. But there's always that element too of how you can bring virtual opportunities to people. And for some folks during our connections, it doesn't work necessarily for their time zones or during their workday to connect with one another. If I'm trying to meet with someone in Sydney, Australia, based in New Hampshire, it can be a challenge. So we try and ask people to be creative, send an audio message, send a Loom video, send something where they can still connect a face to the name or a voice to the name and find that connection where it's more informal, but spend that time investing in connecting with your peers. There was some research that I did last year around burnout and stress, and research shows that facilitating opportunities for people to connect and to foster friendships within the workplace and build connections and your internal brand drastically reduces stress and burnout as well. So it's really fun to be one of those people working on how to facilitate a culture where people can build connections and spend time in that setting, regardless of virtual or in person.
Colby, sorry, Adam, can you mention a couple of tools you guys use for that connection, or because I'm sure people might want to take notes.
So we acquired a company called Roots, which we use their connections platform, and they have a few different aspects within their connections platform or plug in through Slack to make it really simple for people to be connected in an informal way. So first of which is a Meetup Roulette, where every other week you receive a Slack DM from Connections by Roots pairing you with someone in Deal internal team from all over the world. And it prompts you through a process of setting up time that works best for your calendar. It integrates directly with your calendar, so it's super easy. You meet with the person through Slack, introduce yourself, and set up a 15-minute call every other week to connect with Deal people from all over the world. And I love those. And it's, you know, it's definitely a time investment, but it is a way to learn about different passions, hear about different cultures around the world, different holidays and the way that people celebrate, their backgrounds, who inspires them, what hobbies they do outside of work. And it's such a fun way to facilitate discussions that are informal and really drive passion behind the work that you're doing and find similarities. The second way is through interest groups. So when you join Deal, when you're on the plugin through Connections by Roots, you can see a list of interest groups, which can be anything from Deal pets, people sharing photos of their work from home buddies, which I have a golden retriever, I think, as I mentioned, posting pictures of her sitting by my side, a wine interest group, so people who travel, try different kinds of wines, tasting them, pairing them with different foods, all kinds of different channels that bring people together from an interest in a common interest group to build those connections, all the way up to it. And again, we're in our foundational building phase of employee resource groups. So how can we support groups of people that want to be their full selves at work every day, and to show them the empowerment and uplifting aspect of being a part of Deal and being a part of an inclusive community like Deal, LGBTQ+, DE&I, working parents, the unsung heroes of the world, working parents who, you know, we just want to make sure that they feel like they can have the balance of being an unbelievable parent while also being an unbelievable badass at work. So we have all of those different aspects of resources. Yes, all of you. And then lastly, there's a fun channel where we honestly just post prompts of getting people to drive connections through fun prompts. Today, the Connections by Roots prompt was send a picture of your at-home workspace. So some people are posting fun pictures of their desks being an absolute mess or guitars in the background, and you can see that they're interested in music outside of their work, but really leaning into the outside of business connections so that you can find opportunity to connect within the workspace. And that's been a really successful technology and tool for us to use. And we acquired Roots a few months ago. So we are able to give them the feedback and the direct feedback for them to integrate and work with their customers on too.
Very cool. Thank you, Colby. Adam, did you have something to add, or you good?
I love that story about that channel. We do something similar in First Place. As you can imagine, what we do, people posting their workspaces is pretty relevant for us. But we've also done things like posting baby pictures and posting, you know, kids pictures, whatever it might be, and it brings the team together. But I think what that goes to, and what both Colby and Katie have talked about, is really essentially having a multi-pronged approach, where you do sort of the small things like Slack channels, where people are posting, where people can share stories, share things about themselves and have these quick interactions with each other and bring that kind of those light moments of sort of personal interaction to a workday. And then I think then the second level, which is more a sort of a one step beyond that, which is things like, again, both Colby and Katie talking about things like virtual coffee chats, virtual happy hours, doing, I've seen, we haven't actually done this at First Base yet, but I've seen other companies do things like virtual city tours where you can hop on a Zoom and I'll do a tour of a city together, or things like that. I think are great. And then I think the third piece is then that the in-person piece, whether it is just local meetups or whether it's whole company or team offsites together. I think that's a fundamentally important thing, because for all of the stuff we're talking about, the ways to interact and engage virtually, nothing substitutes for in-person interaction. And I think if you have a combination of those different prongs, then that can foster a positive team spirit and strong team building.
Awesome. I'll just add something quickly here, and then I want to move on to the next question so that we can get to the questions of the audience. At SafetyWing, we do a few things. One is that we have 4 team gatherings a year. We're still relatively small when compared to Deal, so we're able to do this. So the last one was in Tulum, Mexico. The next one is in Bali. Before that was in Costa Rica. Before that was in Slovenia. So like really beautiful places. We bring the team together. Just like Katie said, half of the day is kind of like collaborating, working. Half of the day is team building activities and fun. And it makes it such a pleasure to go to these, because it's not like your typical like work conference. You're having a lot of fun with your colleagues. You're building those bonds that will carry you throughout the quarter, which is nice. Some people choose to meet more often, so they will be in, like a lot of people right now are in Lisbon, Portugal, and they'll post pictures together in the window of life in Slack. And we're looking into potentially renting or buying a castle so that it could be a point of gathering for the team, but also for our customers as well. So that could be interesting. We're in the research mode there. The second thing that we do, which is virtual completely, is we use a tool called GatherRound. Not sure if you guys have heard of it, but it's really cool. It kind of like, matches you up with other people. It asks like 5 very thoughtful questions, and everyone takes a turn at answering, but those are like, deep, sometimes intimate questions that you don't usually ask someone if you're having like a call on Zoom or Google Hangouts. So that's something else that we do, and also do some fun activities kind of like virtually as well when it's needed. So I think we should go to the next kind of tip. And I think this is really important, especially for a lot of you guys that are onboarding new people, especially new team members. I think, yeah, it's good to talk about this. Maybe Adam can talk about this. What does the process look like? What are you seeing your customers doing as they're onboarding? What is the proper way to onboard so that they're successful, they're happy and healthy?
Yeah, sure. So I think, look, the 4 of us on this call work for remote first companies. I think I would imagine most of the attendees are in a similar position. And so I think we all agree that getting remote or flexible work right is a business imperative. Companies that don't do it are going to struggle with attracting talent, retaining talent, etc. I think a lot of companies have recognized that. A lot of companies have shifted remote or have been founded remote and are operating in that way from a policy perspective. But the challenge is that their processes and the way they operate isn't necessarily built for that. And this applies more to companies that used to be office-based and have shifted remote. And in many ways, most of their processes, although they are now letting employees be remote, most of their processes are still focused and reliant on proximity to a single location. So when we think about onboarding specifically, it's things like the first day experience is based on having everyone in a room together. The equipment that is provided and how it is provided is built around having an office from which you can store. IT can set up laptops, provide laptops to employees, do that onboarding experience on a first day or first week. And that's a problem. And ultimately what needs to happen is the whole the modern employee onboarding and outfitting needs to shift to be much more cloud-based. And onboarding is a big part of that whole remote experience. Onboarding employees who say that they have an exceptional onboarding experience are 3 times more likely to be satisfied in their job, and that obviously has a knock-on effect on things like retention and overall productivity of the employee. Yet coming back to what I was just saying, how companies are doing it, that they haven't adapted to that. So research by a company called Paychex shows that 55% of companies, although they are now allowing remote to happen, they haven't actually changed something as simple as what equipment are they providing to their employees at home. And that has significant issues. It has knock-on effects with the health of employees. Things like injuries from not having ergonomic equipment. It has a knock-on effect from that onboarding experience. Employees not getting what they need, not feeling valued, and not having that exceptional onboarding experience, which, as I said, leads to that improved satisfaction and retention. So essentially, what I think needs to happen is a complete shift in mindset. Now that the world in many ways has shifted to accept remote, the world now needs to shift to adapt to actually make remote great. Obviously, from a first-base perspective, that involves shifting to a cloud-based infrastructure, which doesn't rely on employees, on a company having an office to be able to provide great equipment to employees and facilitate the supply of that equipment. But it is broader than that. It covers every aspect of that onboarding and overall ongoing employee experience.
Very good. Colby or Katie, do you have something to add? We move on to the next one.
Those are great points, Adam. We think of our onboarding in 3 different phases now. When you're in a fully remote work setting, when you can't get people into one space to host and foster that onboarding experience within a room, we're thinking even further about the onboarding process around pre-onboarding. So starting a week before your first day at Deal, and then onboarding is the first week of being a Deal team member, learning about the mission, about our principles, about leadership, the history of the company, and then the cultivating phase, which is really the first year of employment through Deal. And what kind of additional handholding can we do? How can people really feel empowered within their role through different trainings, growth opportunities, helping people learn from internal and external stakeholders to make sure that they're growing professionally within their role and set up for success. So we're thinking about it in 3 different phases, and our knowledge and learning team is really great about taking that feedback in of what could be done better or differently as we're in this hyper growth phase. How are we surveying people to know that as we're growing and scaling, what resources are most important and how can we develop them to be more successful as we continue to grow?
That's great. I'll just add, my favorite book is The First 90 Days. It's written really tailored towards leaders on how to onboard, but I've kind of designed our onboarding program to that. So each manager actually works with their new hire on a 90-day onboarding plan based on that book. I created kind of a template for them. But I think you have a good point, Colby, of onboarding starts even before your first day. So that's important because you're getting a feel, and it's so nerve-wracking to start a new job. What's interesting that I'm finding is I'm hearing from employees, it's actually a little more comfortable being 100% remote first because you're in the comfort of your home. I mean, I've got a blanket on. So I remember starting, it's a little nerve-wracking, but then I'm like, oh, I'm at home, I have my blanket and I have my plan. And so I think just helping maximize on the comfort level of your employees and then, kind of integrating them with a plan. I'm a big fan of plans. Otherwise, you might plan to fail if you don't have one. But that's all I would add. Shout out to that book. It's one of my favorite books.
Very cool. I love that. I also wanted to add one more technology or tool here that we use, which is Notion, and I'm sure all of you use that. And that is how we schedule the onboarding with everyone. It kind of like goes through all of the plan, like you mentioned, Katie, like mission, vision. You have to meet with X amount of people. You have to set out your plan for the next 30, 90 days, however that is, depending on your role, obviously. And then, we give people enough time to really drink from that fire hose because it is crazy joining a fast growth startup. So having that first 3 months kind of like be like, hey, don't worry, you don't have to produce right away. Just take it all in, really kind of like settle in, and then you can go nuts. It's really helpful because otherwise people feel a lot of pressure to prove themselves, to do really well, and they end up burning themselves out really quickly, and then maybe just quitting because they can't take that pressure. So it's really important to communicate that it's okay, take it slow. You don't have, to hit your goal tomorrow. You have the whole year kind of thing. Great. We have a ton of questions, by the way. So Charles will help me kind of like read all of those. But before we get there, I just want to maybe cover one more thing. So reducing or removing meetings by improving communication. I think we did mention some of this, like using Loom videos to send a message versus calling a meeting is really nice. You can do a 5-minute kind of like Loom video instead of having a half an hour meeting. We also do maybe like the meeting set for 20 minutes, not 30 minutes. And that gives a person a buffer and also enough time to kind of like get up from their chair, take a sip of water if they're like back-to-back meetings. Sometimes we do no meeting weeks where you can just not have any meetings, and that's really nice. But I'm a big fan of like async work, like as much as you can do async, because in remote work, and especially in our company, we kind of like judge by the output versus the input. So having a lot of meetings doesn't mean that you're doing great. So think about what can you do to reduce those meetings so that you're as efficient as possible. You have as much time to complete the most important tasks on your list. That's my tips.
I can share a few. I have a lot of expectations for meetings. So I have agendas for every single meeting that I do, and I do expect that we have it filled out. And sometimes, a lot of people set regular series of meetings, and so I'll always check to see if there's agenda items. And if there's not, I'll just ping the person and see like, hey, do we have stuff or do you need the time back? You have to be delicate because there's something to say for just building relationships, especially if people are new. The agenda is, hey, nice to meet you. So that's totally okay. That's a fine meeting to have. And then I also always save the last 5 minutes for every meeting I have on action items. And we have an owner for each. So who is doing what? And that's really helped. It really helps actually cut down on the number of meetings because you need to have a purpose for this meeting. And the async work with Notion, we use both Notion and Google Docs, but even with my direct reports, we'll write stuff down during the week and we will solve it in the document. Like I'll put comments in there and we don't even have to discuss it. So the async is really a time saver too. So yeah. That's all I got.
I think on that, I think it requires in some ways a rethink of the sorts of skills that you both look for in the recruitment process, but also then reward and promote within the team. In a way, the written communication is now far more important than it was in a pre-remote world. And so, for example, asking during an interview process, asking about examples when employees have designed processes and documented those processes in a way in a shareable format which other people can access. Seeing examples of documents and written communication that relevant person has done before, I think is important, because those are skills which, as I said, in an office-based world, which are far less important. And then I think coming to the meeting point, I think there's a really interesting thing I read about a company called Asana Labs did, and they called it meeting doomsday. And that was essentially what they did is periodically, I think it was once a quarter or once every 6 months or something, everyone in the company just deleted every recurring meeting they had on their calendar. And they had to leave it off for 48 hours. And then after 48 hours, they then rebuilt the calendar and just decided at that point which meetings they wanted, how long they wanted them to have, and wanted them to be, and so on. We haven't yet tried that at First Base, but I think it's a really interesting concept. And what they found is that meetings became less frequent and shorter in length, and it resulted in the employees at Asana Labs on average saving about 11 hours a month which they previously spent in meetings that they didn't in the future. So I think that's a really interesting concept, and one that I'm personally quite interested in exploring with my team.
Colby, if you don't have something, I have a question from the audience.
I'll just reiterate, I'm a huge fan of Loom, and especially in a hyper growth phase, I think having evergreen content is really helpful. Of course, face-to-face meetings, group meetings are really important so that you can hash out action items, so that you can brainstorm, so that you can align on goals for a project or next steps. I think that's great. And truly at Deal, we have like 10, 15-minute meetings, which I've never had at a previous employer. It's always a half an hour, 45 minutes, or an hour. And it helps you become much more intentional around that time and having a quick hello. And of course, how was your weekend? But what can we jump right into, and how can we dive right to the point, and then work asynchronously to continue to make progress throughout the week. And then having check-ins or short touch points to make sure that you're continuing to make progress and supporting action items is really helpful. But Loom to me is always successful when it comes to such a globally spread company, to make sure that the time zones aren't a problem, so that you can have a face to the name while still presenting on a topic or aligning to make sure that you're working towards a common goal is really helpful. So I'm a big fan of Loom, but I also like face-to-face meetings, but asynchronous work definitely cuts back down the time. And our executive leaders lead by example by having a no meetings day. So Shwo, one of our founders, has no meeting Wednesdays. Meltem, head of growth, no meeting Wednesdays. And you can choose whatever day that is, but it allows you to be heads down during that day, really focus on the work that you're doing, and then spend the other days during the week working on your meetings and collaborating with people.
Yes.
Can I ask a quick question? Sorry, Colby, did you say is the norm 15-minute meetings at Deal?
It's not the norm, but I've never, the only meetings that I would have that were 15 minutes before were a quick hello, a coffee chat, something to meet people informally. But really most of our meetings are 15, 25-minute meetings, and allowing you to have that 15 minutes afterwards or 5 minutes afterwards to grab a glass of water, transition into your next meeting, or even take action items right into play and start working on those things efficiently right after your meeting follows, which is a new concept for me to be working on, unless you need, of course, a longer time to think through things. It's a cool way to do touch points and have quick actionable meetings.
And sorry, a question from the audience. How do we set boundaries for meetings? So, how to set meeting boundaries is a challenge, as it is so easy to schedule meetings without venue restrictions. Interesting. Venue restrictions means that it has to be at a certain place in person. I don't know. But boundaries, I guess, yeah, Katie said something interesting, where you have to have an agenda, and then there has to be action items at the end. And then, yes, having certain days that are meeting free, like Colby mentioned. Anything else?
I believe everybody does this. They do the work block, but what you can do is actually make it public so everybody can see it. And you can say, I've seen people do this and it's effective, of please don't schedule unless very urgent. And then you might think twice, because everyone is scheduling things, and you can see people's, if you can see people's calendars, I think you're going to have better success in scheduling things. But that might help. And then some people on my team, we have a lot of parents. And so some on my team will say, I'm childcare, if you need to schedule a meeting, please pay me, same thing. And then I have very clearly, like, I pick up my kids every day, and it's very clear, if you're going to call me, then I'm not going to be focused. You're going to have kids screaming in the background. It's not going to be a great experience for you. So I'm just really clear on, like, picking up kids. And if I need to, I'll do a call if I want to, but usually people respect that pretty well if you make it public so they know. I think what's difficult is when you're blocking out everything and nobody can see anything, and then it's like impossible to schedule time with you. So you're just going to throw something on the calendar and hope it sticks. So I would just be more transparent.
Cool. We have a lot of questions, so maybe I'll take the next one real fast. This one is a general question. It says, hybrid company with traditional executives that would prefer people be in an office. What are some suggestions to help get over that hump and communicate the benefits of remote work? Same person who asked this last question says, is there any proof of ROI on transportation costs when considering bringing remote employees together offsite to help sell the idea to leadership. This is so interesting. I've been thinking about this, where I feel that certain parties have an interest in getting people back to the office, and those are obviously big real estate owners. Real estate is very expensive, so if you are a company that has real estate, especially a company where it just paid for like a new campus, I'm getting a lot of kind of like their employees messaging me on LinkedIn and saying, you know, this is so dumb, like why are they making us go to this thing? They're justifying building this thing a couple years ago, so they want us to go back, but I'm actually looking for a remote job. Can you help me? So a lot of these people that are being asked to go back, they don't want to go back. So the first thing, the ROI, is retention and attraction of talent. If you are not, you know, if the executives don't understand this, I feel really bad for them, because seeing how well companies like ours are doing remote, and we're serving remote companies, the growth is incredible. Deal where Colby is with, and Jeeves and First Base, we're seeing just like crazy amounts of people that are either starting their companies remote first or are going remote. And the reason is because talent wants to be remote. As we said, like freedom and flexibility is number one. So that's one thing. The other thing is making people go to an office. Gas prices are at an all-time high. So people are paying, the car payment in the US reached like $700 per month, which is crazy. And the gas might be anywhere from, I don't know, 400, 600, depending how far you're driving. So that's really crazy to put that cost on your people. And the offsites, yes, they are expensive, but they don't compare to paying rent and also everything that you save for your employees. That's what I'd have to say. I don't know exactly the number in terms of the comparison, but yeah, we would never think about having an office.
Yeah, I would agree with all that. I think the only thing I'd add is, in terms of the cost savings, is clearly if you can either remove or reduce an office space, the cost savings are huge. One of our customers I was speaking to the other day, actually, they have about 300 or so employees, and they got rid of their office, and they get together as an entire company once a quarter. So they're 300 people to somewhere, book a hotel once a quarter, so 4 times a year. And the cost of that, and all of the other things they offer for remote employees, so including, as I said, you know, First Base and providing their employees with all the equipment they need and various other things, they're still saving about 80% compared to what they were spending on the office. So that is a massive saving. Plus, as you say, attracting and retaining talent. Losing talent is hugely expensive, and if you can avoid that, you save masses of money.
One thing I would add that might help this person is kind of what you were alluding to, Adam, is come up with the numbers. Sometimes we are guessing in HR, but you can actually calculate the cost of retention, and rehiring takes about 4 months on average to hire a new employee. And so if you're trying to get something across the finish line with your leaders, I do find that putting numbers to it helps, and you can be clear that this is a guesstimate, but that can maybe help your case. And I agree, it's very rare that I find employees who want to go into an office 100% of the time. I have one friend who's a chief people officer who feels that way, and she is one out of many. So I do feel like the working from home is life-changing for many people. So just put some numbers behind it when you're trying to talk to your CEO or your leaders, might help.
Awesome. We have a lot more questions and we don't have enough time. So I'm going to read out another question, which seems very good. How do you manage qualitative and quantitative remote performance? How would you manage performance on employees without modifying or reducing their flexibility/agenda? So do you manage qualitative and quantitative? And then how do you manage performance on employees without modifying or reducing their flexibility? I think for us, I mean, obviously we measure output, so we don't have to manage very much people because it's very clear. You can see it from the output of the work. The qualitative part, we do have an internal NPS and we use Lattice. which is kind of like an HR platform to measure how happy people are. So we always know kind of like a pulse of the company, like are they happy, are they doing well? Because I think that that's where you'll find a lot of the things you need to solve. If people are not happy, if they're not going to tell their friends about your company, then that's where things have to change, whether it's a culture, management. That's how I found, because we have like 100% retention, and we do have this NPS internally, which is always at a 9 point something out of 10. And also Lattice also pings us saying like a couple questions, a month to measure.
I'll just add, I think it's really important to align with your team and to, as a leader, be someone who sets key expectations and identifies key results in a qualitative and quantitative way. So what are some targets that your team is expected to hit? And especially in a remote setting where you're not in the office, no one's looking over your shoulder and seeing what you're delivering on a daily basis, you allow that person the ownership and freedom and say, this is our goal, this is our target, and really clearly, here are our expectations for your delivery over this next week, day, month, year. And you have the ownership and opportunity through the flexibility that we offer to deliver that as best you can with quality performance, and allowing people to show their delivery and the ownership that they take through working autonomously and independently. But as long as expectations are clear, that there are data points to be taken into play, and thinking about those in a percentage or in a data or in any type of analytics you can pull to make sure that it's as clear as possible and expectation setting is really clear, then I think that people have the independence when you're working remotely to work as effectively as they can. And that shouldn't really impact taking away flexibility or taking away, how frequently they work. It should be the productivity and the expectation setting and making sure they're aligned to that.
Great. Ready for the next question? This is kind of interesting. If I allow to choose flexible hours, team collaboration becomes very challenging. Being a consulting firm needs to have close interaction with teams. Okay, how can I give employees a flexible schedule but also keep good collaboration?
I mean, I think we've touched on some of that already. I think that the move to async and written communication thing, like we've already spoken about, the use of the likes of Notion, Google Docs, where things can be done without having to be on a call, where you don't have to be working at the same time as each other. That being said, there are clearly going to be situations where you do still need to speak, and there's no doubt about that. I think on that basis, I think it's important to allow the flexibility, but also important where you are, working within a function or working cross-functionally, where there is going to need to be that collaboration. You have some level of crossover on a daily basis. So whether it's 1 hour, 2 hours, whatever it might be, there is a crossover period where you can be available to have those calls where necessary. And then I think all of the things that Katie was saying about agendas and the rules for meetings and stuff like that can then apply to make those as productive as possible.
Agreed.
Awesome.
And boundary setting is important, of course, but this idea of 9 to 5 has also been blurred within remote work and working across time zones. So although flexibility can be a really great benefit, it can also be challenging where you have to be open to being flexible yourself. Do I need to take an 8 p.m. meeting sometimes, and then maybe they'll work for my working hours, and vice versa, being flexible, working with the people you need to collaborate with to be most efficient. I think it's great to be open and thoughtful around that. And if you wake up early, maybe you sign off a little bit early, or if you're working late at night, maybe you sleep in the next morning. I think there's a great opportunity for flexibility in that sense.
Yeah, that's exactly it. It's like there's two sides of flexibility and you have to do both. So if you want flexible work hours, you're going to have to be flexible with your work hours. So just like that, I work with India. It's really important that I show up to those meetings. So you have to be willing to be flexible if this is what you want. I think you all hit on that.
Yeah, we only have 2 minutes left, so I will be conscious of time. I want to thank the panel for your participation. I want to thank all of you that joined us. You will get the recording after this. Please connect with us on LinkedIn We are all here and happy to connect with all of you. If you have any questions, feel free to kind of like message us specifically, especially if it's specific to the different companies that you have on here. And yeah, we have the next webinar coming up August 16th, going remote. So for you that had a lot of questions on how to do remote, maybe you're still in the office, you want to convince your boss to go remote, definitely come on that webinar, because we'll have some incredible lessons from leaders that have taken companies remote or have started them remote first. So that will be very helpful for you. Thank you, Colby, Adam, Katie. It was very nice to see you guys
Thanks,
today.
everyone.
Yeah, thanks, everyone.
Have a great rest of the week. Bye.
You too.
Bye.